Hello there, very good evening. This is the weekend edition of Primetime News on TV1. I'm Martin Satyanesan for the people. For the News First team, let's start off with a look at your headlines for this evening.
Final rites of Chaminda Lakshan, who was shot by police in Ramukkana, held today. Suspect who set fire to a bowser during protest arrested. Large crowds joined protests at Golface. Prime Minister Mahinda Rajapaksa says any interim government should be formed under his leadership. Sri Lanka welcomes global support for debt restructuring. President tells Asia Pacific Water Summit. PASL's recommendations to uplift the country.
On to your top story this evening. The final rites of Chaminda Lakshan, who was shot dead by the police during protests in Ramukkana, were held at the Hiribodna cemetery today.
Professor Omalpe Sobhidathero and other Buddhist monks carried out religious observances today.
Tatiyampi buddhang saranang gacchami. समस्त महाजनतावගේ යහපත වෙනුවෙන් යම් හඬක් නගන්න ගිහිල්ලා තමයි ලක්ෂාන්ත මේ ඉරණම අත්ුනේ. අද යුගයේ අප මුහුණ දෙන අතිශයින්ම අධාර්මික, අතිශයින්ම ආත්මාර්ථකාමී, අවනීතිය රජ කරවන රජයක වැරදි ක්‍රියාමාර්ගයේ නිසායි ලක්ෂාන්ගේ ජීවිතය හිමි වුනේ. වත්මන් පාලනය අතිශයින්ම අදූරදර්ශී, අතිශයින්ම අධාර්මිකයි. පාලකයා දක්ෂේ බුද්ධිමතෙක් විය යුතුයි. වත්මන් ජනාධිපති අගමැති ඇතුළු මේ පාලකයන්ට පරිසංයු ගුණේ නැහැ. ජනතාව හඬන ඇහෙන්නේ නැහැ. ජනතාව හඬනකොට ඔවුන්ට ඇහෙන්නේ ජනතාව hina වෙනවා වගේ. මහ ජනතාවගේ දුක වේදනාව හඳුනන්නේ නැති වර්තමාන පාලනය බුද්ධ නියමයට විරුද්ධයි. බලය තිබුණත් ඒ බලය පාවිච්චි කරන මාත්‍රඥතාව තියෙන්න ඕන, පමණ දැනගන්න ඕන. පමණ දැනගෙනයි බලය පාවිච්චි කරන්න ඕන. පොලිස් වෙඩි පාරෙන් චමින්ද ලක්ෂාන් මිය ගියාට පස්සේ පාලකයෝ සතුටු වෙන්නේ නැති. අපේ ආරක්ෂාව සඳහා අපේ නිලධාරීන් කටයුතු කළා කියලා. අපි කියනවා පොලිසිය නිලධාරීන්ට, පොලිසිය හා හමුදාවේ ආරක්ෂක හමුදාවල සියලුම දෙනාට අපි කියනවා ඔබ අතේ තියෙන ඔය ගිනි අවි පත්තු විය යුත්තේ බඩගින්න නිවා ගන්නට කෑමොර ගහන ජනතාවට විරුද්ධව නෙවෙයි. මේ ජනතාව පෝලිං වල ඉඳගෙන රෑදවල් දෙකේ කෑ ගහන්නේ බඩගින්න නිසා. තෙල් ටික නැහැ, ගෑස් ටික නැහැ, කිරිපිටි ටික නැහැ, අත්‍යවශ්‍ය ආහාර ද්‍රව්‍ය වල මිල ඉහළ ගිහිල්ලා පුංචි දරුවා අඬනවා කෑ ගහනවා කිරිපිට ටික ඉල්ලලා ඉවසා ගන්න බැරි වෙච්ච අම්මා තාත්තා තමයි පාරට බහින්නේ. සාමාන්‍ය ජන අරගලයකදී නිරායුධ මිනිසුන්ගේ අරගලයකදී කටයුතු කරනකොට සෑම පොලිස් නිලධාරියෙක්ම මතක තබා ගත යුතුයි මේ ප්‍රදේශයේ වට කරලා ඉන්න ඔය ආරක්ෂක හමුදාවල අතේ තියෙන තුවක්කු ඔබට පුළුවන් කමක් නැහැ පත්තු කරන්න. ඔබ මිනිස්සෙක් නම් බත් කන මිනිස්සෙක් නම් ඔබට පුළුවන් කමක් නැහැ අහිංසක මිනිසුන්ගේ ඉදිරියේ කොකා ගස්සන්න මිනිසුන්ට එරෙහිව.
A protest was held at the Hiriwaduna junction in Rambukkana opposing the death of the protester.
The Criminal Investigations Department has arrested a man who set fire to a Bowser during protests in Rambukkana on Tuesday.
Nearly 20 statements have been recorded over the incident. About 10 documents are to be used as case objects. They have obtained security camera footage from the area to carry out further investigations. Many videos of this incident were circulated on social media and electronic media. They are analyzing this footage as well. Many channels add footage and some pictures showing a man setting fire to a Bowser. He has been identified. The Criminal Investigations Department arrested him today.
The Colombo Magistrates Court has rejected a request by the Fort Police to prevent violence at a protest planned at Golface for tomorrow. The protest has been organized by the Inter-University Students Federation.
The Fort Police submitted a report to the magistrates seeking an order to prevent any violence during a protest by the Inter-University Students Federation at Golface tomorrow. As lawyers, we argued that the court can't issue an order based on presumption. We argued that this is an attempt to prevent the students from carrying out the protest. The court rejected the request to issue an order and said that the police can take legal action if anything of that sort happens. Therefore, the court didn't issue any order to prevent the protest or anything similar to that.
Several issues have affected the people at present. The shortage of goods coupled with inflation and political instability has made life difficult. Protests at Golface demanding the resignation of the government continue today as well.
The protest in Golface opposite the President's office in Colombo ran for its 15th consecutive day today. Determined citizens with no party affiliations turned up in large numbers at the demonstration site.
Even the family and friends of Johnston Fernando, Mahindanand Gamage, Bandula Gunawardana and Rohita Gunawardana are facing the same issues. But these ministers who are focused on switching sides don't understand the people's worries. They are saying that Gotabaya Rajapaksa will not resign until it is done according to the constitution. I would like to ask, did they loot the people's money according to the constitution? They have left the country indebted for hundreds of generations. We can't let them get away.
මේ රටේ දේවල් කොල්ල කෑවේ මිනිස්සුම පාරට ඇදලා දැම්මේ කොහෙද මේ කතා කරන මිනිස්සුන්ගේ ලැජ්ජාව තියෙන්නේ නම් කටින්ද කතා කරන්නේ නැත්නම් කොහෙන් හරි වෙන තැනකින්. පරම්පරා 100කට විතර හම්බ කරගෙන රට පරම්පරා 100කට විතර ණය කරලා යන්න හදනවා. එහෙම යන්න දෙන්නේ නැහැ.
People with special needs were also among those who joined the protest today.
This country wasn't ruled by our parents. Only about 4 or 5 families ruled the country since 1947. We must understand that it was these families that caused the social, economic and political downfall in our country. We can't wait in queues to buy fuel, medicine and gas. There are more than 1.6 million disabled people in Sri Lanka. 70.9% of them are begging on the streets without income. Who left them in that position? It's not me or you. It is the corrupt in political officers. We join your cause to support the young people who are protesting here.
All boys of leading schools in Sri Lanka also joined the protest.
We came here to support our brothers and sisters. There are people without food in our country.
This is a disgrace to the heroes who saved the country by fighting for it. These rulers have brought this country to a situation to which it was before. It can't get any worse. Alumni members of the Vayamba and Jayawardhanapura universities and the Sri Pali campus, along with students, joined the protest today.
They must realize that they can't go forward. No matter what they say, the people are suffering. They are helpless. It has reached that position. You can't deceive the people anymore.
Venerable Matre Vimaladamma Thero, who commenced a fast unto death at the protest site yesterday, was admitted to a hospital this afternoon. The Inter-University Students' Federation expressed views at the Gotago Gama Media Centre.
President Gotabaya and Prime Minister Mahinda Rajapaksa, your time is up. You can't hold on to power by playing games inside Parliament anymore. Gotabaya will not step down even if this building is surrounded by protesters. Mahinda Rajapaksa will not step down either. If they are not stepping down, we will chase them away. The people are on the streets. The people will make the decisions in the country.
A protest march began from Galface Green in memory of the protester who died in Rabukkana.
Meanwhile, crowds are continuing to gather at Galface to join the protests against the government. Newsfirst Senator Sena Naika brings us the latest.
People from all walks of life from around the country are here in Galface for the 15th consecutive day of protesting. Now, it's rained here a short while ago. Despite that, these determined protesters are demanding the resignation of the president and the government. Trade unionists, professionals, artists and mainly young people have been protesting for the past 14 days, and today is the 15th day. And what's unique about this is, even though this protest has been held for more than 14 days, this location is clean. It's free of trash and it's free of plastic. I'm Senator Sena Naika reporting for News First.
Honestly tired of this, right? So every day they are in power is a cost to our economy. They should know that and do the wise thing and step down rather than coming later and saying, sorry, I couldn't make that decision.
We are disappointed with the government behavior. Even at the parliamentarian we say, your deals and your behavior at the parliament is disgraceful because we feel you are not accomplishing anything for the people. The inflation has gone so much so the people cannot afford it. That's why people are on the ground fighting for their rights, fighting for their freedom, fighting for their life back.
This Aragalaya is a great moment in our lives to witness. You must see the crowd here, young boys and girls.
Children who are studying for the O-levels and A-levels, who have their O-levels and A-levels coming up, have to study with great difficulty. They have to study under candles with emergency lights.
To the Rajapaksa family, I like to tell you, this country is not yours. It is not ours. It is the future generation. Look around. Open your eyes. Look around at the young people suffering today. You have messed with the wrong generation and they are not going to give up. And we are supporting them. I have come down from overseas specially for this and I will wait with them.
අපේ රටේනේ උඹලා හැම එකෙක්ම මෙතනට ආවේ අපිට සපෝට් එකද කොරෝනා කාපු සල්ලි ටික අරගෙන ඉරේ දාන ගෙදරින් වෙනස් නතර වෙන්න හොඳ නැහැ අපි ජනතා ආණ්ඩුව යන්න ඕන ව්‍යවස්ථා වෙනස්කම් වෙන්න ඕන සාමාන්‍ය ඒ පඩි ප්‍රමාණය වලට ඒකට සීමා වෙන්න ඕන එක රටයයි එක රේදුරයි ආරක්ෂකයෝ දෙන්නයි සාමාන්‍ය රාජකාරී වෙන්න ඕන නැත්නම්
Non-partisan protests were held in other parts of the country, demanding the resignation of the president and his government. All shops at the Badulla town remained closed as the businessmen and people of Badulupitiya held a demonstration. Our correspondents reported that protesters marched through the streets of Badulla from the Gota Gogama protest site in the area. Fuel bowser had crashed into a fence when passing through the area. The protesters then helped to remove the bowser.
Yesterday, the cost of gas was increased up to more than 5,000 rupees. How can we survive? Why can't you understand what we are saying? One says that he has the support of 6.9 million people, but the entire country is fed up. Today, there is no money to buy a kilo of rice. We can't even have some food, so please go home.
A petition was signed at a protest site dubbed Gota Gogama in Kandy, where demonstrations are ongoing for the 7th day.
The government says they are still in power because they have the mandate of 6.9 million people. That is why we are trying to show them the power of 7 million people.
Demonstrations at the Gota Gogama protest site in Gaul ran into its 6th day today.
A protest march led by social media activist Thisaranuruddha Bandara from Gampola reached Kandy today. The activists raised awareness on the current political situation and issues such as inflation.
It took us about 8 hours to walk from Gampola to Kandy. What we want is to explain to these people as to why we are demanding these corrupt politicians to go home and for them to understand the solutions that we are proposing.
A businessman launched a 24-hour satyagraha near the Dodangoda clock tower, condemning the cost of living and the death of a protester in Rambukana.
මම ව්‍යාපාරිකයෙක්. මගේ කඩේ
I'm a businessman and there are 6 employees in my shop. All those 6 families are silent today. I haven't opened my shop that was closed on the 11th. Hotel owners don't have cooking gas. Oil prices are high. We are carrying out this struggle collectively because we can't live like this. If they can't do this, we ask them to give it to a capable person and to go home.
Sri Lankans living overseas continue to stage protests against the current state of the country. A protest was held in North Carolina in the United States.
We want accountability for all the crimes of the Rajapaksa family, and we will continue to show this solidarity, and today is just the start. So North Carolina is with you, Sri Lanka.
People should be concerned about the corruption, the nepotism, the murders that have been happening in Sri Lanka under the Rajapaksa rule. We want them jailed, we want them held accountable for the corruption, for taking money out of the country. So we want them to go home, we want them to return the money to the people of Sri Lanka so we can move on from this.
They may have citizenship in Europe or Dubai or in LA, but we have only country that's our Sri Lanka.
Expatriates living in Foril, Italy held a protest in solidarity with the Sri Lankans at home.
Sri Lanka Rajapaksa family family.
Speaking on News First's Focal Point, social activists Dr. Prabha Manuratna spoke about the youth behind the protest unfolding in Sri Lanka.
This is the most effective and greatest generation we've had for some time. I mean, they've really risen up to the occasion. They have discovered something that we desperately needed in this country. This is just an amazing comeback for a generation that has had to deal with so much and who were beginning to feel really quite hopeless. So I think what they have brought is hope for their generation, as well as to everyone else in the country. Particularly if you look at Occupy movements and resistance movements in the world in the last 10 to 15, even 20 years, I think, going all the way back to the World Social Forum, these have been the critical features of nonviolent protesting across the world. So these young people are learning from their peers. They are learning, I mean, they're very smart. Many of them are bilingual. They're very tech savvy. So, I mean, you go online and you find creative ways of responding to crises of this nature. So I think what they're doing is what they're very good at doing. They are discovering what is available out there.
What has caused the shortage of cooking gas?
There is a shortage of more than 1.2 million gas cylinders in the market at present. State-run Litrogas Lanka Limited, which holds a 70% market share, has been unable to meet the demand. The company said it had distributed between 100,000 and 120,000 gas cylinders to the market daily in the past months. However, production at the Litrogas terminal in Keravalapitia has remained closed since the 13th of this month. This has resulted in a shortage of about 1 million gas cylinders.
Why did the chairman of the Litrogas resign suddenly?
Teshara Jayasinghe submitted his letter of resignation as the chairman of Litrogas Lanka to the president on the 14th of this month. He said he had not received the support of the subject minister and other state officials to resolve the gas crisis. Vijitha Herath was appointed as the chairman of Litrogas Lanka Limited to fill the void created by Teshara Jayasinghe's resignation. Vijitha Herath had previously served as the chairman of Sri Lanka Insurance Corporation. Under his directives, Litrogas Lanka yesterday decided to increase the cost of a regular gas cylinder up to 5,175 rupees. But the decision was reversed an hour later. The gas crisis in the country continues to remain unresolved, leaving people helpless.
They are destroying the state-owned gas company in an attempt to form a family business in the industry. This is a gas mafia.
Short-sighted decisions of authorities and political interference have caused a massive crisis that has left the people affected. Many are now seeking alternatives like firewood stoves. But those in apartments of Colombo have no other option. Long queues to purchase fuel were seen in many areas today.
This is not the first instance in which people have been affected due to wrong decisions made by authorities. Gas leaks and explosions left people in fear for several months in the recent past. Investigations had revealed that the explosions had killed 7 and left nearly 100 injured. Justice continues to evade the victims of these explosions. Officials responsible and accountable for the crisis are yet to be brought before the law. Who will bear responsibility for the lives that were lost or affected by these gas explosions?
These are difficult, challenging times for ordinary Sri Lankans, more so for those already living below the poverty line. Government stepped in to provide them with a sense of relief today.
Gammadda distributed food packs among families in need in Talawa, Anuradhapura today.
News First with the people.
In more local news, President Gotabaya Rajapaksa says Sri Lanka welcomes investment and assistance for debt restructuring. He made his comments during an online address at the 4th Asia-Pacific Water Summit in Japan.
The 4th Asia-Pacific Water Summit was held under the theme Water for Sustainable Development, Best Practices and the Next Generation. Leaders of 48 countries and representatives of international organizations attended the summit.
Even during the COVID-19 pandemic, my government was able to increase the number of new water connections to the public by more than 50% compared to what had been achieved annually in previous years. Despite considerable resource constraint made far worse through the pandemic and our ongoing financial crisis, Sri Lanka's commitment towards such development as well as towards sustaining a progressive agenda on the environment remains unchanged. Sri Lanka welcomes investments, technology transfers and financing for our sustainability effort, as well as broader development assistance and cooperation for debt restructuring to support our economic recovery during this critical time. All of us alive today are custodians of this planet and on behalf of future generations. Managing water for sustainable development is a duty incumbent on all of us on behalf of our future generations.
Meanwhile, opposition leader Sajith Premadasa has insisted he will not enter into deals under any circumstances.
The Samagi Janabalawege had organised a protest march against the government in Ambalipitiya today. Opposition leader Sajith Premadasa led the protest. We are ready to take over the country with responsibility. We have solutions to the problems that have affected the people. We won't form governments, enter into agreements or make deals with the thieves of the SLPP. We won't form a government with the Rajapaksas. The government made a sudden request to form a unity government by offering ministries. Sajith Premadasa is ready to take up the position of the Prime Minister. The Samagi Janabalawege is ready to take up ministries. However, we will only take up these roles with the people's mandate. We won't engage in deals to satisfy a few. I would rather step away from politics. I would retire. I'm telling this publicly. I would like to reiterate that I will only resign after I reveal those who make those deals. We aren't fond of the President's and Prime Minister's deals.
Chinese Ambassador Qi Shenhong had met with 7 independent parliamentarians in Parliament yesterday. They had exchanged opinions on the current situation in Sri Lanka, China's assistance and other topics of mutual interest. The parliamentarians had requested China's continued support to Sri Lanka. Meanwhile, the Bar Association of Sri Lanka issued a release highlighting a number of proposals to restore political and economic stability in the country.
In a statement, the Bar Association of Sri Lanka says that without political stability, it would be virtually impossible to resolve the economic crisis.
The Bar Council has proposed a restoration of the 19th Amendment, and with it, the Constitutional Council and the independent commissions which existed previously. In addition, we have proposed that the appointments of the Monetary Board, including the Governor of the Central Bank, be brought within the purview of the Constitutional Council. We have also suggested that secretaries to ministries, ambassadors, high commissioners, governors be appointed by the President on the advice of the Prime Minister in consultation with the Cabinet of Ministers. We are also proposing that presidential pardons must be given upon recommendation of an independent body. Our second proposal is that there be a government of national unity consisting of 15 ministers. We propose a government of national unity headed by a prime minister who is able to arrive at a consensus among all political parties in parliament, political parties which are recognized by the speaker in parliament. In order to provide support to the 15-member cabinet, we are suggesting the establishment of an independent advisory council comprising of experts who will advise the cabinet of ministers on policy matters. And we suggest that any decision of the cabinet, before cabinet takes a final decision, that it is put to the advisory council. Then we suggest that the interim government have a common minimum program. Among its tasks to be to combat corruption and to bring in specific legislation, such as the recovery of proceeds from crime, anti-corruption laws, that there be this common minimum program include important matters, including, of course, addressing the economy. We suggest that what we call the government of national unity should be for a maximum period of 18 months, and thereafter there should be general elections. Then, most importantly, we propose the abolition of the executive presidency. We propose a timeline for the abolition of the executive presidency. We suggest 30th November this year to complete the legislation, to pass the legislation relating to the abolition. And we set a maximum time frame of 15 months from now for the final abolition of the executive presidency. And we propose to replace the executive presidency with a parliamentary form of government, that is where the cabinet of ministers is headed by the prime minister, and the prime minister and the cabinet of ministers are responsible to parliament.
Prime Minister Mahinda Rajapaksa says he would lead an interim government if one is to be formed.
හිටපු අමාත්‍යවරයෙකු වන ඩල සලහපෙරුම ජනාධිපතිවරයාට ලිපියක් ලියලා කියලා තියෙනවා අන්තර්වාර ආණ්ඩුවක් බිහි කිරීම සඳහා අග්‍රාමාත්‍යවරයා ප්‍රමුඛ කැබිනට් මණ්ඩලය ඉවත් වෙන්න ඕන කියලා.
How can an interim government be formed without everyone's policies and proposals? If an interim government is appointed, it will be led by me. I don't think anyone would agree for an interim government to be led by anyone else, including Ranil Wickremesinghe.
දැන් වත්මන් ආණ්ඩුවට එරෙහිව රට පුරාම විරෝධතා පැවැත්වෙනවා. ගාලු මුදුර පිටියේ ජනාධිපති ලේකම් කාර්යාලයේ ඉදිරිපිට දවස් 15ක් තිස්සේ අරගලයක් ක්‍රියාත්මක වෙනවා. මේ අරගලය ගැන ඔබ මොකද කියන්නේ?
The protesters simply continue to occupy the place without coming forth for discussions. They should speak and discuss with the government officials. That would be a good option. Otherwise, the protests will continue.
හැබැයි ඔබ මීට කලිනුත් ආරාධනා කළා අරගලේන තරුණ පිරිසට ඇවිල්ලා සාකච්ඡා කරන්න කියලා. හැබැයි ඒ සාකච්ඡාව කිසි දෙයක් ඉදිරියට ගියේ නැහැ.
If the protesters are willing, the doors of temple trees are open for them to come in at any time and discuss with officials. They can conduct discussions with the ministers and MPs.
We'll continue with more local stories after this short commercial break. Stay tuned.
නිවෙස පුරා ගලන මේ සතුට සුරක්ෂිත කරන්නේ එස්ලෝන් ඉන්සයිට්. එස්ලෝන් ජීවයයි ජලය ජීවිතේ.
Welcome back to the news. Senior DIG Nilantha Jayawardena was blamed for the 2019 April 21st attacks at a media briefing this week. Civil activists called for his arrest during a webinar held today.
We are throwing a kind of a challenge to the Secretary Defense, Major General Kamal Gunaratna, IGP, and the Director CID. Now, you all went after Shehan Mahalaka, who was representing all the youth yelling for justice. You went after Father Cyril Gamini on that small statement. You even went after an innocent three-wheel rider for a Facebook post. Janadipati Nitiknyo denne, Eyala President's media center came kale. Nilantha should be dealt with. Go after him.
Reverend Father Rohan Silva spoke about seeking international support in delivering justice.
The international support that we are seeking has already been initiated by the visit to the UNHCR. We are also making all the possible attempts to sort of lobby this with the individual countries. Attempts are being made to find out whether international court can be approached, and the lawyers are trying to work on that.
Workers' remittances in March this year rose to $318 million from $205 million a month ago. The increase comes after the floating of the Sri Lankan rupee during the first week of March. Last month's remittances, however, is a drop of 48% compared to March last year, when remittances remained above $600 million. Moving along, artist, writer and designer, the iconic Barbara Sansoni has passed away at the age of 94.
Barbara Sansoni is best known for her textile designs, hand-woven panels and individual pieces made through Barefoot, the company of rural hand weavers in Sri Lanka she founded 50 years ago. Sansoni is the chairperson and chief designer of Barefoot Private Limited. She was also passionate about architecture and has several publications to her name.
From that, we bring to a close this edition of Primetime News on TV1. I'm Martin Satyanes, and for the News First, where the people come first. You take care and good night.